stuff. But hey, game design is pretty fun too. And we're still kind of in a semi-lockdown situation, depending on where you are in the world. And in Canada, where I'm from, we're still kind of in a lockdown. So we're here tonight with two people who are participating in the Tabletop Mentorship Program. We had Mike and Grace on the show a little while ago. And this year, I thought, we're doing this extra show. And last month, we focused on Asian Americans in gaming. And this month, I thought we'd focus on people in the Tabletop Mentorship Program, because actually we don't have two people. We have three people. I'm also participating in the Tabletop Mentorship Program, and this is my first time. So I find it really fascinating. I love mentorship programs, and I'm really happy to have my first two guests here. So welcome to Katie and Femi. Very nice to have you here on the show. Lovely to see you. We have people from all over the place. Femi, where are you from?
I'm from Nigeria.
Yeah, and where in Nigeria?
I'm in Abuja, the capital city.
Oh, very cool. I've never been. Should I come? Is it a fun place?
Well, of course, it's always a fun. It is a fun place.
Okay, cool. And we also have Katie with us. Katie, how are you?
I'm doing well. Thank you for asking.
Great. And where are you from, Katie?
I'm from California, the Los Angeles area.
Excellent. And also, it would be remiss of me not to say Happy Pride Month to everybody out there who celebrates Pride. Love is love. Just let it be, please. Happy Pride Month to everybody. So let's talk about origin stories. Katie, let's start with you. Where did you get the drive and the impetus to say, hey, I'm going to make a game? Where did this come from?
Well, I have always had that drive to make games. Ever since I was a kid, I remember pressuring my mom to laminate like a board game that I had made with my sibling, and like making like chess variants and things like that. But I didn't really think that I could make a career out of it until like maybe half a year ago.
Okay.
I actually still don't know if I can, but like I'm gonna try.
Right, exactly. And so when did you start like seriously thinking? Was it half a year ago you said, this is what I want to do? Or was it before that?
Like I had like been dabbling with the idea of like making games like for a while. Like at first it was like video games, and then I played Root, and I was like, wow, games can be really interesting and tell interesting stories and have like a lot of depth. And I didn't realize this. And then I fell down that rabbit hole, and then I was like, wait, maybe I can make board games. I have like a lot of ideas that I wanted to do, but I couldn't quite like conceive them as video games. And so I started doing that. Like I started working on that like half a year ago. And and then I found out about the mentorship program, and then things have really started like accelerating when
that's great.
That started.
And when you say you couldn't conceive of them in a video game, was it just because prototyping in pencil and paper is easier for you to do than it is to code stuff? Yeah. Okay.
Yeah, that's a big part of it.
Mm-hmm. I hear that a lot. That a lot of people are like, I have this great idea for a video game, and they say, but I don't really know how to code or use Unity or anything like that, and they're like stuck. And they never think of making the jump over to paper and pencil prototypes. Like seriously, if you're out there and you're going, I have a great idea for a game, grab a stack of recipe cards. You can get them, 100 of them from the dollar store for $1, and grab a couple markers and go for it. Really, there's no better way to make a game than to actually, start making it. Sitting there and thinking about it all the time doesn't get it done. Just put something on paper, put it on the table in front of yourself first, then in front of your family and friends, then go further and further. And every time you take it a little step further, the game sort of changes a little bit and gets better and better and better. Femi, what about you? How did you get started in board gaming, and what made you decide to actually start making games?
Oh, thank you, Sam. all this time, my major interests have just been playing games. I just wanted to play as many games as I could lay my hands on. Then, about a year ago, I realized that the number of persons on ground for me to play games with are actually very few, as not a lot of people have a lot of idea about the gaming industry. So, and I also realized that some games which I would love to play, a lot of friends are likely not interested in playing it because of the complexities.
Right.
So we end up having to play much more simpler games or games that they're already used to, the standard Scrabble, Monopoly. I was able to get a few to play Ticket to Ride, Catan, Azul, other games that I believe they could easily learn. Then about a year ago, when I really dabbled into the hobby tabletop industry as a whole, I figured that, okay, how about I introduce them to games on a particular scale, which brings them into the industry and enables them play certain games. So I designed my first party games because here in Nigeria, there are quite a number of parties among the young folks. So we get to play a lot of party games.
Good.
And so I felt that was the gateway to like link up with a lot of them and stylishly get them acquainted with tabletop games. So I
Right.
designed the first set of games I designed, Instant Series, are all games that could be taught under a minute, in a minute or two, and
Wow.
played immediately. Yeah, so I did the instant words, instant songs, instant rhymes. Very simple to learn and play on the spot. Then I also did the instant numbers and instant letters, so that we have a little bit of anagramming and arithmetic to play with there.
Right. Okay.
So yeah, from there I decided to take it up a notch. I worked on a card drafting game, Owunikoko. In Nigeria, in Yoruba, it means money is the main thing. So it's a game
Okay.
where players are striving to be the wealthiest at the end of 7 rounds and all that. So
Hmm.
it's still in this prototype form, but we've played it over and over, and we're still tweaking here, tweaking there. And basically, my current game is what brought me to that point is basically okay, we've come a bit of a long way. So I believe we can step into actual game mechanics now and away from party games a bit. So simple games with simple mechanics. So basically, the environment is what cultured my design life.
Right.
Mostly, I was good with just playing as many games as possible. Whenever I lay my hands on a game, I just want to play, but I have to convince someone to play with me. So
Right.
there, I thought I should work on creating a community to have to always play games with me.
That is really fascinating. Because each country has its own little culture of gaming around different things, and even within countries, different communities within countries even have their own sub community or sub way of gaming that is very different from each other. We had Thomasy Mangiok here once on the show, and Thomasy is from way, way, way up north in Canada, and so he's Canadian. I'm Canadian. Though he might not claim Canadian citizenship. Well, being Indigenous. So, but their games were all really interesting because they all involved like stones and like whales bone needles and things that you would never think about using, but they had to because up in the subarctic area, stuff would just you know rot and get wet and with like snow and stuff like that. So they really couldn't have paper based anything in terms of the games that they had as children. So it's just really interesting, how your environment, like you said, your environment, your culture kind of dictates what type of games and things you play with as children and as even adults. And it sounds like, Femi, you're creating a gamer culture in Nigeria a little bit, right? That hey, there is a need for games. Like everybody plays games. You said, we play lots of party games, but what about these other games? And if you're interested in them, somebody else is probably interested in them. They just don't know yet. And it's really fascinating to me that you're actually, you're creating your own gamer friends to play with by making games that might kind of hit them at the right spot, like at the right level where they are looking to be at. instead of trying to, yank them up to a really high level but that's something that exists already. You're trying to say, hey, let's make the game at your level, and I'll just keep making games at the level that you're at until you are at the level where we can play some of the pre-existing store-bought games. That's fascinating. That is really, really interesting. So, Katie, in terms of your design philosophy, what do you think you bring to gaming that is indelibly Katie Allred? Like when I play one of your games, what am I gonna see that makes me say, "Oh, 100%, I bet Katie designed this game."
So to me, it's very important that games are accessible. And when I say that, I mean like not super complex. My friends like a lot of like those heavier games like Terraforming Mars and like Power Grid and games like that. And I think those games are like fun, but like I like the games like Space Team and The Mind and Monikers, like, and these are all like described as like party games. But I think that, but like this is where like the conflict in my personality is. Like, I also love games like Oath and Root and Pax Pamir, these really complex like war games. So I would like to get to a point where I could figure out a way to mesh like those kind of games with like these party games,
Right.
these like sort of accessible experiences that still have like this emergent storytelling like aspect to them,
Right.
and this emergent strategy like aspect to them. I don't know if that's going to be a thing I could pull off, but that's what I'm hoping to do.
Right. I mean, I think that's part of the joy of exploration of the process is, can I figure this out? Because if you can, by the way, you will be hailed as a genius. That would be amazing to see a game that has the accessibility and the approachability of a party game, but had some of the strategic depth that we see in some of the more complex games. And it's really interesting because I think Femi's journey is sort of similar in a way, right? That he was saying, a lot of people just here play party games, and it's not that I don't like them, but what if there was something a little bit more to them? And I think that's where a lot of people come from, is we have this experience with games, but then we get to play these other games. And like you said, Katie, you played Root, and then no pun intended, you fell down the rabbit hole. There are rabbits in Root. They're just not any of the major factions. But you fell down the rabbit hole, and now you're involved with all these other games that are pretty complex games like Oath and Pax Premier and all those types of things. But there's something about the simplicity of a game that you can pick up and teach in a minute, like all the instant games that Femi is talking about, that is really, really enticing. Because I think most gamers and most game designers, I think we really just want to spread the love of gaming. And the easier it is to get people to play, and the more accessible it is, and the more approachable it is, then we've really done our job, I think. Right. But then we also have that question, that nagging question in the back of their head. What can we do to make them play the next level? How can we get them even more involved and more involved? And I hear that from both of you, and I think that's really fascinating. Femi, for you, what's the fingerprint that you stick on your games? What is, a Femi game? If I saw one on a shelf, I'd say, oh, that's something that Femi designed.
Okay, so initial on a normal day, I would have gone for the thematics. That's the theme of the games. Of course, I always want to make something relatable to my culture, to my environment, and all that. But over the course of my design stages and designing, I think I've come to learn that it's more of a relatability, how the audience I'm designing for relates to the game. So
that's a good thought. I like that. Keep going.
yeah. So when I design, for example, the Instant Words game, basically it's a party game, and I want a bit of chaos during the game.
Sure.
So it gets during the gameplay, I want to see the players getting riled up at a point. And most times I get that and I believe, okay, yes, the job is done. I did what I should do there.
Done it.
Exactly.
Yes.
And so that's I want to be able to relate to the audience. Other people can play and enjoy, but I want to ensure that the audience it's designed for are having the best of that game. So I
Right.
think relatability, I don't know if it makes a lot of sense, but I think I'll just go with that.
No, I like that. And I mean, it may be hard to do, but the idea I think that you're talking about is very important. I watch a lot of anime, and one thing I've realized just this year, I've been watching anime since I was a little itty bitty kid, and I'm like almost 50, and I realized just this year, just this last year, that the only reason why I like an anime is if I can relate to it. Like if I can understand the relationships of the characters in the story, that's it. Like I think mech are fun, and super Saiyan powers are cool and all that kind of stuff. But if I don't appreciate the relationship between the characters in the anime, I can't relate to the anime itself. And so I think the same thing works with games. Like, if you can't figure out or you can't feel that this game is something that you relate to, you're going to be disconnected from it. And I think the disconnection that people feel about media and games, and why would you want to spend your leisure time engaging with something that you don't feel connected to? I think that's kind of the bottom line. And if anything, I found as game designers, we tend to really rely on empathy as a skill, being empathic, and listening to other people about what they want and how they like to play and all those types of things, and putting those into games is really important design skills. So when you say that, Katie said approachable and accessible, and you said, relate to the game, those are often synonymous. And I think both of you have a really good outlook on life in terms of the game part of it, where it's like, yeah, I want to make things that people will be able to play and like and engage with in a meaningful way. And that will hopefully immerse them in the culture to get them to play even more games or different games or just the same game. And that's still fine, right? All of that is still
Yeah.
fine. Very, very cool. How did you get involved with the Tabletop Mentorship Program, Katie?
I follow like Cold War. I like a lot of my biggest inspirations in gaming is like Cold Warley, and I follow his Twitter, and like he retweeted like something about the mentorship program at one
Right.
point, or and I was like, this sounds like right up my alley. Yeah, I was going through this phase where I was kind of applying to like any sort of like mentorship programs, but like the tabletop mentorship program was kind of like the most like accessible one for me. And
It's super is. Yeah.
yeah. And like it's kind of incredible. Like there's like it blows my mind to explain how like incredible it is. Like there's no like entry fee or anything. There's no like bar. It's just a matter of like if there's enough mentors to pair with like, and so I think it's like a really incredible program.
It really, really is. It's such a neat program in terms of all the work that Grace and Mike are doing for it, and everybody else who's involved with, running the Discord and doing all the other stuff for the program. It's a really great way for new designers and publishers, and that's the thing. It's not just design. We're all talking about design because that's what I mentor in. But if you were, say, a publisher who just needed to learn how to kickstart something, or a graphic designer who works in magazines but really likes games and said, hey, how can I get a career in that? There's mentors for almost all these things. As long as there's a mentor, there's a place for you in the program. And I think that is super, super wonderful. So this is your first time, Katie?
Yeah, well, actually, this is my second time.
Okay.
So like my first time through, I was like just starting with designing, and I had only play tested with like some local friends a few times. I was driving them a little crazy. And I was trying to figure out how to like play test more because I was like, this is
Right.
critical and I have no idea how to do it. And so when I joined the mentorship program, I was just like, I just had like a goal of like play testing like 6 times. Like if I could just play test with strangers at all, that would be like a big deal for me because I had just been playtesting with friends. I got connected with Evan Halbert for my mentor for the first time in the program,
Right.
and he was amazing, and he provided all this like amazing perspective in terms of like things from like working with publishers and self-publishing and things like perceived value versus manufacturing costs. And he also connected me to a lot of like great online communities. And then I was like, oh, so this is how you play test. Like there's like all these like really amazing groups. I've become really involved in this Break My Game Discord, which is
Right.
like
Yes. Yes.
amazing. They play test like every single day. It's wild.
Yeah, we have a words from Michael himself saying, "Oh, thanks for the kind words, everyone, and thank you for signing up and being a part of it all, and thank you for running it. This is a labor of love, obviously, that you are doing, and a great service to the community, I believe. What about you, Femi? Is this your first time through the Tabletop Mentorship Program?
No, this is my second time.
Good. All right.
Yeah.
Y-
Um,
Tell us about your first time. Tell us about what's happening.
Yeah, so for the first time, a friend sent me a link to the micro grant still run by Michael and Grace too.
Yes.
And while I was applying for it, I saw the meta. I was like, wow, this seems like a great idea. So I tried for the next taking, which was in I think January. Yes, I think about January. So, and it was awesome. Julian Steindorfer was my mentor, and I had an awesome time. I was still getting acquainted with a lot of concepts in the industry, and it was such a great help. So, yes,
Yeah,
it's
so
just awesome.
it seems that a lot of people come back for more than one session, which is totally awesome, and really does show that mentorship is a lifelong thing, and learning is a lifelong process. And even as much experience as some people have, it's really impressive to see that people are also willing to learn. There are some people who are going through as mentees, like people who have mentors who have like several published games already, who just need somebody to help them because, especially in this time where a lot of people lock down, they need that extra set of eyes and ears, that kind of litmus test, that check to see that they're all still going well. Mike asks a question. He asks, as second-time mentees, so this is to both of you, have your expectations for your mentorship changed versus the first time you signed up? Did you go into the second time with different intentions? Katie, can you answer that question?
Yeah, absolutely. The first time I felt just like a fish out of water, and I was kind of like, I just need direction. I need to know how to do anything. And it was like great for that. And then I feel like I learned a lot, and I feel like I got put on this trajectory, but then I feel like I hit like another like block where I'm like, I don't know how to approach like publishing. How do I like actually approach that step? And so that's why I applied the second time, because I was like, okay, here's like a brand new thing that I like feel completely lost in. And like the mentorship program helped me a lot with feeling completely lost the first time through. So I figured the second time through would help again with that same
Yeah.
lost like kind of feeling.
Yeah. So, it's a funny thing that you're saying, you feel completely lost, but that's an interesting place to be, right? That feeling of uncomfortableness is just a sign that I guess I'm ready to change. I guess I'm ready to move on to bigger and better things. Like if you're always comfortable, that must be a strange life, to be honest. Like I don't know if you just stop learning, just stop doing stuff when you're comfortable. And the other thing that you mentioned, Femi, is that micro grant program that is put on through this as well, which is really, really an amazing thing that, no questions asked, no strings attached. Here's $100.
Yeah.
And for some people, it makes the world of difference. We often ask ourselves, what can $100 do? But we're really not thinking like a lot of people out there who might actually need that $100 just to get this idea from here to the table. A lot of people just don't understand what $100 can do because they have ready access to money. So Femi, what about you? As a second time mentee, did things change your second time around? And what was it?
Yeah, definitely things change. So the first time I was still getting perspective, a lot of things going. Um, there wasn't a direction per se because due to the infant stage of the industry here in Nigeria, I was trying to get a lot of things sorted. There were no content creators, no publishers per se. I only knew one designer, a friend, Casey.
Yeah, everybody knows
So
Casey.
yeah, so there weren't a lot of things going for me. So I just came into the mentorship program trying to, okay, let's just see how it goes. Then Julian did a terrific job actually because he tried to rein in all these concerns of mine in a way and highlight the ones in which he could help the most. So I came in, I was trying to figure out how the content creation goes, how design goes, how publishing goes, how business aspects of the game industry goes. Because
Yeah,
as
it's a
at that
lot.
point, I basically just quit my job and I was trying to get the whole thing running, and that was my interest. I was turning my passion into work and all that.
Right.
So that was it for the first. But for the second, I came I won't say strictly, but I get all riled up and get talking about the other things once I get the opportunity. So I still have to constrain myself back to talking about games design. So I'm just trying to get this particular, my target is to get this game published by the end of the mentorship program, or at least be on the path to publishing it
Right.
by
But
then.
you
So
you're mostly a self-publisher though, right? You would make it yourself?
yes,
Okay, I
up
see.
to now, yes.
Yeah. Very, very cool. So I like how, progress. That's exactly what we're seeing here. We're seeing everybody, whether you come with something or nothing or somewhere in between, um, every round of the mentorship program, both of you have made incredible progress. And whether you think you have or not, you've learned a whole lot of stuff that will get you to where you want to go. It's not, a direct line sometimes. Sometimes it's just wavy path. But all the time that you spent has been time well spent. And I think that's what's really important, that you all see value in the program enough to come back a second time and trust the process, which is really hard to do. A lot of people, it's hard to put your trust in other humans sometimes, especially when there's distance between us and you might not know them. One of the coolest things about the board game industry, I find, is that there's a lot of people very, very willing to go on a limb for other people and help them realize their dreams. So, are either of you hoping someday, once you maybe feel a little more comfortable and know a little bit more, that you're going to give back and mentor in the program? Is that something you'd like to do? Katie's nodding her head.
Definitely.
Yeah.
Yeah,
Definitely.
I was like really on the fence of like applying as a mentor, but like I don't know if it's imposterism or just genuine like not being experienced enough. I was just like, I don't know if I could guide another human. Like I was looking through the options of like things I could guide because like I'm really good with tabletop simulator because like I'm a software engineer. I'm really
Right.
good with computer stuff. So I was like, I could mentor somebody on making prototypes, but I didn't see that option on the list. I was like, I don't think I could help somebody with anything else.
Well, there you go, Michael. There you go. There's another option to me. And the thing is, like, so there's a couple people who are doing both, like they're mentoring and being mentored, right? So I think, for people like Katie who have a very specific skill set, there might be some real call for that. Like, I would love somebody to help teach me how to implement stuff better on Tabletop Simulator because I am not a software engineer. So I would really appreciate that kind of thing. Femi, what about you? Are you thinking about mentoring in the future?
Definitely. I'll likely go the route of being a mentor and a mentee at the same time, then, of course.
Very
But
good. Very cool.
yeah.
So that's awesome. We've got questions from people. The whole mentorship program, I think, is such a wonderful way for people to give back to the community as well. And understanding and realizing that we as individuals can't make all the games that we want to play, and sometimes other people do it better. So that's partially why I do it. It's like I just want to see cool games. The other thing I definitely want to see in the industry is a lot more diversity in terms of who is creating the games, and this little threesome that we have here is a that's my perfect image of what is possible with a little support, in terms of getting more diversity into the gaming sphere, where we have creators of all shapes and sizes doing cool games, doing interesting stuff, so that we don't always have the same old games all the time. I'm really fascinated by programs like the Zenobia Awards, that are specifically encouraging people to design games that otherwise wouldn't get designed. And I think that is fascinating. That is, the elevation of the art form, where it's not just about the entertainment factor. It's about what is it actually saying? What are the messages that we are saying through these games? So there we go. Oh, Michael said in terms of your point, Katie, that they will make it more obvious that you can put in a custom subject matter to mentor somebody in. Hey, there you go. Next cycle, you're in. There you go. I expect to see you, and
Awesome.
I'm gonna sign up and ask for you by name.
Yeah.
There you go.
I would love to help.
Yeah. Very cool. Thanks, Mike. That's great. So let's actually talk about your actual games. Katie, Persuasion and Unravel. Those are two separate things, right? Okay.
Yeah.
And Persuasion, you were telling me, is like a Victorian courtship game. I'm fascinated. I'm utterly fascinated. Tell me more about this.
Yeah, so this was like a game that I've had in my head for like a decade. I was watching Pride and Prejudice, and I was like, there's like some really compelling like conflict going on in this. Like,
yeah, there is.
How come they don't make games about this kind of thing? They always make games about people shooting each other, but I never see any games about like the drama and like the high stakes of like these high society like people whose like livelihoods depend on marrying the right person.
Right.
Yeah, I've been working on this card game where you send letters to other players in the form of cards, and what you're really doing is handing power to those other players, and giving them options on like what they could do. And attached to those cards are information about your character, as well as like powers that they could use. And so you're trying to deduce information about our players, but you don't really have any power to get that information unless you convince them to send it to you.
In the form of a letter.
In the form of a letter, yes.
Right. That's really fascinating. I don't know if you know, there is another game about, is it called Marrying Mr. Darcy?
Yes.
I can't remember.
Marrying Mr. Darcy, yeah.
And let me tell you, that game never goes out of print. No, it doesn't. Like I've talked to the consolidator for that. If you watch the show, the Meeple Syrup main show from like 2 or 3 weeks ago, it was actually on a Friday night. It was a Friday night forum when James Takanaka from Hit Point Consolidation said, yeah, that's one of their best selling products ever. It's just constantly printing more copies. And it's fascinating. Like when you said, why aren't there more games? It's like, yeah, why aren't there more games like that about that subject matter, about, war, but in a different way, right? It's like, it's not war as in warfare, but it's like you're fighting for something. And you're jockeying around for position in a social structure. And that's fascinating to me, the way that you're putting it, like, because in every letter you're revealing a little bit more about yourself, and you're giving people a little more influence over you by letting them into your life a little bit more. And I think that's really, really a really cool analog in terms of, real life and game kind of linkages, right? That's fascinating. Very cool. So that's Persuasion. And then what's Unraveled about? I don't know anything about Unraveled, so tell me all about it.
So yeah, Unraveled is so like Persuasion's a deduction game, and so is Unraveled. And I didn't exactly plan this, but they are. And Unraveled, it's this game where one player is playing the conspirator that's trying to carefully craft like commit crimes in such a way that they don't reveal too much of their conspiracy.
Yes.
And the investigator's trying to figure out what that conspiracy is and pick out like red herrings that like the conspirator could throw in.
Okay, cool. And is that like a multiplayer game or a two-player game?
It's a two-player game.
Okay.
You could theoretically have a bunch of people playing as the role of the investigator, but it's really like a two-player kind of experience.
Okay. When you first mentioned it, I honestly thought it was about cloth unraveling, but now I get it. I get it. That's awesome. And it's funny when you originally were talking at the beginning about, I want people to play games that are accessible and approachable and social, but maybe a little deeper. I was actually going to say, you mean like deduction games or social role deduction? And here we are. That's what you're making, because it does fit exactly that kind of thing where it's like it's easy and simple to pick up. You explain you're trying to lie, you're trying to cheat, or you're trying to get married to this person or that person. Go, and it's real simple, because they're the real world analogs, very simple to explain. But then the gameplay, that complexity is all in the cards, and that would be real interesting. I'm fascinated. I'm really looking forward to hearing more about that. And luckily, I get to on the Discord forum, so hopefully, I get to see more about Persuasion and Unraveled as everything moves forward. What other ideas have you had that you think you'd like to do that aren't Persuasion and Unraveled?
Actually have a few other ideas that I've been working on.
Tell me all about them.
They're all like half baked. First off, there's this really cool game jam going on. This small games, big themes jam. It's like this activist game jam, and I'm really invested in doing something for that. I'm working on this game. About appealing to different demographics.
Okay.
I really want to get people at least thinking about the idea of diversity and representation and how it influences and impacts people. That's like one game I'm working on. I've been like trying to work on it all day long. I haven't figured out a way to make it work out in a way I'm satisfied. And then another game that I really want to make someday, which I'm really struggling with because it's way deeper on the complex side, is this time travel game where you have like different goals that are not necessarily in conflict with the other players. So you might like work with players that are in the past to like shape the future so that you both win, or you might like try to trick them into shaping the future in a way that'll help you win but not them. That's
time travel is like a holy grail for a lot of designers, because it's hard. It's super hard to see all the threads that you're pulling, right? So I wish you luck. I wish you luck on that, because I would absolutely adore playing that. That's fascinating to me. Femi, what about you? So currently you were telling me that the project you're working on is about infrastructure. Tell us about that.
All right. So what's brought about this project was basically, as I said earlier, stepping up with the games I have friends play. And this particular game, I try to strip it to the barest minimum of simplicity. So of course, I have a few friends that have probably short attention span. They don't want to hear so much rules. Just give me a simple rule. Let's get right to it and play a game. So that was the guiding compass to my design of this game. So other things felt off. In fact, of course, there are certain games I enjoy, and in the process of designing, I felt like, oh, what if I infuse this and this? But I had to go back to the point of simplicity and like strip it to its bare, as simple as possible. So the team basically is surrounded by a new governor. You've just been elected as a player. You're a new governor of a city or of a state, and you're supposed to develop a particular infrastructure for that state. So there
Okay.
are 5 different states, and they all have 5 infrastructures. There's 5 common infrastructures to the game, but each state has one peculiar one which is most important to it. For example, a state might need a lot of education, but might not be big on agriculture. And in
Okay.
the
I get
middle
it.
point, exactly. So there are 5 infrastructure. One is the target, which is the most important. There's one which is the least, and there are 3 which are just like midway. So they all, it works. It's a grid system kind of thing. So players draft tiles and place on their boards, individual boards, and at the end, it's scored based on the grids. So 3 by 3 is the highest, 2 by 3, 2 by 2, and so on. So
Okay.
at the end, the players receive like their cities face down. So they only know the cities they are. You can only insinuate or guess. You might not be so sure till they open up their cities. So at the end, it's the grids are just counted and scored points. So of course, the target infrastructure scores higher points. And over time, other players might want to mess up with your infrastructure if they feel like they have not been getting their way. And I have to say, I try to think of a simple mechanics behind it. I've played King Dominoes. I enjoy Azul. So I kept trying to wrap my head around it. And I have to say, I have to go back to the tile drafting style in Sagrada, where first player picks, second player picks, then the last player picks 2, and it comes back that would
Right.
balance things up. So yes. So on every round, a certain tile equaling double the number of players. So it's a 2 to 5 player game. So if there are 2 players, 4 tiles are drawn per round, and they just draft the tiles in that manner. And so yeah, I think I want to hope I got it as simple as possible, because of course I'd not put a limit on positioning of tiles. It can be placed at any point, but it cannot be moved after then. Um, yeah, and I think that's infrastructure in a nutshell. That's basically the whole game.
Okay. And why did you pick that as a theme? Is that something that you think will resonate with the gamers in Nigeria?
Initially, when I designed it, I designed it without a theme.
Okay.
So my intention was to design and slap a team on it and just make sure. And so that was it. So initially, there was even like a circle of magician team in which different magicians are trying to get certain elements in their societies together. And so I want to say it's a game that is not so much in the team as in the simplicity, because I know a number of things have run through my head, and I think they are all feasible in one way or the other. So I wouldn't say it's all about the team. I just picked that team because while in the process of playtesting, we've tried different. Oh, you are this, you're that, you're trying to do this. So I just left it at the mechanics level, and surprisingly, I spoke to a friend. He's not exactly in the tabletop industry, but he felt, yeah, we talk a lot about the business aspects, and he felt
Mhm.
okay. It's something you can always. That's why I emphasized earlier that it was infrastructure Ninja. So this is a team that a Nigerian person will likely, oh yeah, this is what happens.
It
This is what
makes
we're trying to
sense.
do. Yes. So it's not so much in the team as in the simplicity. We've played it a, a number of times, and I enjoy games where my non-gamer friends sit at the table, and after 2 rounds they're actually plotting against me because they've gotten the game and they believe they can win
Right?
comfortably. Yes.
Yeah,
So
they know you're an expert. They said, "I
yeah,
know enough now
yeah.
to take Femi down. I can do it."
Exactly. So we've played it. I myself, with friends have played it blindly without me being present, but I know I've played close to 25 games of it, and sadly, I don't know if sadly or not, I'm not sure I've won up to 6 or 7. Yeah, so I like the fact that they get the game easily, and that's the aim of the game. Simple enough to get, and by the time I score for the first player, other players they're already scoring theirs before it's even time to score. So I know both the tile drafting and the placing and the scoring phase are simple enough. So
Right, they're
yes,
working.
that's the infrastructure. Yeah.
Good. Okay. And Jamie is saying that you're using a snake draft, which is an excellent mechanic, and it makes for some really natural catch-up mechanics. So if somebody feels like they didn't get enough on their pick, the next pick is going to be better for them, right? So, and people who got the first pick, they end up with the last pick. So it is a very good way of doing that. And Jamie's also saying that what you're doing is called bottom-up design, where you're starting with like the core structures, and then, like you said, slapping a theme on top. And so I guess the question for that would be, are you working to try to integrate the theme and the mechanisms better now that you have a theme? Does it feel like it should, do you think?
I wouldn't I wouldn't have a lot to say about that, because since I had the concept of this theme, we've played it in that manner. Of course, there have been different feedback, because the locations are actual places in Nigeria.
Oh,
So
okay.
I've had certain friends say, so who says Lagos doesn't need this? So if the target infrastructure for Lagos is transport and the least needed is housing, some in the middle are saying, no, I believe Lagos needs more of agriculture, and everybody's just trying to put their opinion. But it just gets much more to interaction than having an issue with the game. Yeah.
Okay, I see. That's still very cool. And I like that, you're keeping it local in terms of trying to entice people to play that are local players, right? When we talk to Casey, and we've talked to him a few times, it seems like there's a real grassroots movement in Nigeria to create spaces and games for specifically Nigerian audiences. And I think that's really wonderful. It's a fascinating evolution of gaming that we don't see a lot elsewhere. It's like, oh, let's just import games from wherever they come from. And the Nigerian game design community has said, no, we're going to make games for Nigeria, about Nigeria, in Nigeria. It doesn't mean that you're not going to get games from outside, but we're also going to do this, right? And, I really commend that whole community for, looking at the need from inside and working on the inside to get that need met. I think it's really, really cool. So, let's talk a little bit more about game design in general. Katie, what areas of game design do you think, and I'm going to ask you to do a little soul searching here, what are you, would you say, those are my limitations? What are you most limited in? It's a hard question, but I kind of want you to think about this for the sake of the mentorship program, is what I'm saying.
I feel like I've got two. One is that I have very poor artistic ability, and that's it goes into graphic design too, which I think leads into my other big limitation, is that I feel like I think differently than most people, but I think really maybe most people think differently, but I have a hard time recognizing that.
Sure.
I look at I'm like, this makes perfect logical sense to me. Like when I word something like this, it is clear as day, and then I present it to somebody and they're like, what?
It's very funny. I often say that I write like a robot, because I am so technically precise that it's painful to read my writing, because I don't want it to be wrong. And then my friend Josh, who often either co-designs with me or has done the rule books for several of my games, he'll just translate it into human speak for me. I actually want to put him on retainer just to. Everything that I write, you just turn into human speak for me, Josh. It'd be awesome. So I get that. I get that sometimes, it's hard to communicate stuff both graphically and in words in a way that is understandable for everybody. Because like I said at the beginning, we're all very, egocentric in how we think. It's like, it makes sense to me, which means it should make sense to everybody. And how come you don't get it? If I get it, you should all get it. And we have to have that a little bit more empathy in saying, yeah, I realize that maybe I'm not, the clearest at writing these things in a way that is easily digested. It's very clear, but it's not digestible. And there's a difference, right? And so, like I said, Josh kind of rides that crest of both understandable, because he knows what I want, because he's read it, and he goes, okay, precisely, this is exactly what you want, but let's turn it into a language that you can use. So A, find a Josh. That would be helpful. But B, you know what? I think a lot of it is really just member checking, like really just asking other people in the community, on the Discord, amongst your friends who are also gamers and game designers, like, hey, tell me what you think this means. Even on like your cards, a lot of people will do this on several of the forums on Facebook. They'll just stick up 2 cards or a card and say, this is what the purpose of this card is in like really basic terms. Like, this is an attack card. Tell me what you think this means based on the graphics, like the icons that I've used here. So I think you can help yourself that way by just putting your work out there and getting people to comment on it. That can help, because you'll get kind of a consensus built by a jury of many people. And then the first one, in terms of artistic stuff, it's funny that, art A is in the eye of the beholder, but B, I don't think art's that important. I think it's more, can you communicate your ideas clearly in a visual format is more important than is it pretty, for at least this level, right? And then after that, you can hire people to draw it really nicely or something like that. So I don't know. I think so many people worry about their product looking perfect. I mean, I used to, for sure. Yeah, like 15 years ago when I first started, it's like, it's got to look perfect. I can't show it to anybody until it's perfect. And that is a complete fallacy. Don't follow my advice on that one. It does not have to look perfect. It can look pretty bad. And if you have friends that know that you're a game designer, that are up for helping you work through these problems, they won't care that it's Sharpie on a playing card, or they use magic cards to put on the back of a thing, or that you made a board out of a pizza tray, or what are they? Pizza box. Sorry. They won't care. They won't care at all. So yeah, I think a lot of the problems that we think we have, I don't know if they're problems or if they're just these little self-limiting factors that we put on ourselves for some silly reason. I don't know. What do you think your strengths are, Katie? What are you really good at? Tabletop simulator. Yes, we know.
Yeah, I'm really I'm really good at computer stuff. I also think I'm really good with like numbers. But it hasn't really helped me it's helped me insofar as that I've been able to like quickly like calculate like, okay, what's like, how often is this scenario going to happen, and what like range should I put this stuff at? Like, so and I feel like I'm really good at finding loopholes in people's games and breaking them. So,
You're the best playtester ever then. That's awesome. It's really funny that you say it doesn't help you, because there are so many questions that the number one question, it's not the number one question, but the number one like game design, actual design related question that we get asked is, how do you balance a game? And you probably just have a very natural aptitude towards feeling that out through numbers, because you understand numbers and how numbers work, and percentages, and odds of things coming up in a deck of cards and all that kind of stuff, which probably goes to your computer programming strength. But it isn't something that everybody has, right? And so it's this interesting thing I think we'll find throughout working through our community of Tabletop Mentorship Program, that there are people with multiple skills. There are people with different skills, people in skills in areas that you don't have the skills in, and that together we can help each other become better, right? And that's, I think, the big strength of the Tabletop Mentorship Program. So everybody out there who's in the program, if you have questions about numbers and tabletop simulator and programming, Katie's putting her hand up. She's like, I'm all in. Give me those questions. Because we all want to feel useful, right? We all want to feel that we're contributing to this in some way, shape, or form. So there you go. Now I'm going to ask you the same question, Femi. What do you think you are not so great at?
Okay.
Hey, I gave you a lot of time. I expected you to answer right away. I'm just kidding. Keep going.
I think I'm going to go the way Katie went to, because I'm not artistic in any way, in any form. But one
Like
of my
not even
closest
not
friends,
even music. No music. No poetry.
just the bare minimum.
Okay.
I used to write.
Okay.
And mostly when I say artistic, I refer to
Like graphic
illustrations,
illustration.
graphic design,
Sure.
and all that. And I think one of the though it gets a lot, it busy a lot. But one of my closest friends is that's his whole being. Illustrations, graphic design. So most times is my go-to person for, okay, I have this, help me bring, let it come alive. So
Mhm.
he gets to figure out a lot of things for me. Um, yeah, I think that's most, I've tried over and over, and it's not, I don't think it's something I just blend into. I've tried, it's not, it doesn't just work out. So yeah. So that's something I'm not
Um,
good at.
what kind of programs are the both of you using to do the graphic design? Do you have any go-to programs, Katie, that you're using?
So I have a Python script that I've written that will generate like an HTML file.
Oh, for like your card
And
templates and stuff? Wow.
yeah, for my card templates. So like I'll write like so I've written some Python code that will like generate like a bunch of like individual cards, and then I'll in that script will read in a CSV of like all the different cards I have, and then I will print that and use GIMP to like turn it into like a TTS format. And that's been my process, and it's a bit janky, but it works for me.
Yeah. And it sounds like because you have the scripting ability and the coding ability that you're able to make these tools, which is really cool. We use Squib actually to do this exact same thing, but Jesse is the one that did that, so I know nothing about that. Um, so, what about you, Femi? Are you using any particular graphic design tools or? Uh,
Uh, Absolutely not. I have a very huge notes where I get to write everything that comes to my head. So um whenever I'm meeting up with my friend to pour out my ideas to him, I have stacks of picture samples, stacks of templates, stacks of examples. But an app definitely not. A software definitely not. So I have a very handy design book in which I write I write a lot so that it gets easier for him to interpret. So
yes.
so
Okay.
I break it down. It's not so much of a gamer. So I break it down to the to we call it say layman. So as simple as possible, I write a lot. So whenever I'm explaining to him, it gets much more
So,
simpler
so
for
you
him.
you actually have skill in art direction. That's what that's called. Is giving people direction in what you want to see, even though you might not be able to make it manifest yourself. That's actually
Yeah.
a huge skill to be able to communicate like that. So that's great that you're doing
Yeah.
that. And putting it in writing is one of the best ways I find to articulate things, because you got to go and check it and you go, is this what I meant? I'm putting it on paper. I guess it's what I meant. Um, but for those of you out there who are looking for, good software to use, sometimes it's not, the most expensive stuff like Adobe, whatever. The Adobe Cloud stuff is great and everything like that, but it's also like a super professional program that you're going to be paying a monthly fee for the rest of your life. So if you're not, making money off it, you might just go for Affinity. Affinity is like a $50, $60 suite, depending on if it's on sale. I think it's like $100 if it's not on sale. And it is actually wonderful. It's like maybe all you need forever and ever and ever. And it's like a one-time purchase. I tend to use cloud-based stuff because I'm all over traveling and stuff. When I could travel, I was all over. And so I used Canva a ton. Canva is this free thing, and it's got like these libraries of different templates, and it's not game related. It's more for making like, you know, e-flyers for Instagram and stuff. That's what it's actually for. But you can make some amazing stuff in Canva. We just actually made the entire Rat Queens game in Canva over COVID. So that'll be a thing. You won't. It won't. It obviously isn't made in Canva anymore. But our whole prototype was actually done in Canva before the publisher got a hold of it and actually did real work with it. There's tons and tons of stuff out there that you can look at. Yeah. Oh, hey, Jamie's saying that Affinity is on sale right now. It is $75 for all three programs. So it has I think a vector program, like a photo paint program, and probably a layout program. So anything you'd ever really need, like if you do get like Creative Cloud, I have the full Creative Cloud for work, but there's so much on it that you don't need. It's just way too much stuff that you don't necessarily need to pay for. I mean, with Creative Cloud, you can obviously cut pieces off of it and not pay as much, but still, it's quite a bit for what it is. So yeah, $25 per program right now, says Jamie. It's on sale. Perfect. Thank you very much. It's a great program for people to take a look at. All right. Hey, look at that. We have talked for a whole hour. You two can talk a lot. That's great. So Katie, where can people find you on Twitter if they're interested in hearing more about Unraveled and Persuasion?
Yeah, so people could follow me at Red Cheshire Kate. That's like my personal Twitter. So I tweet a lot about game design stuff. And I also have a Knife Bunny Games Twitter if you just want to hear about my game stuff. You're not interested about all my trans noise.
Well, I think more people should be interested about that noise, to be honest. And Femi, you are at...
Yeah, Femi. Surprisingly, the last one is not an I, but a small L because of the usernames available. But yeah, I also use the Centroid Games account, Centroid_games.
Okay, let me actually write that in here just so people can maybe find you on that, because they will get that last one, the last L and the last I. So it's Centroid. Is it _games? Okay, perfect. Let's update that. Boom. All right, Centroid Games. Perfect. Adam Young is saying, bring the noise. I think they'd really like to learn more. Perfect. Oh, yes, Mike, you are correct. I forgot that. And we'll stay on long enough to hear all about Femi's strengths. Femi, Mike wants to know, what are your strengths? What are you really good at?
Okay, so I won't say I'm a great communicator, but it also depends on the audience at times, because all the games I learned over the past 7-8 months, I've played about 200 plus games, of course, multiple times for some. And I've had to learn all those games with the rule books, and a few of them maybe watch videos. And most of these games, I learned them with the mindset that I'll likely have to teach it very soon to other friends or to people coming around. So I don't have to term that as a strength, but yes, I can sit down, stay with a rule book and learn it and play the game. Yeah, so that's one. Then
that's a great strength, to be honest.
Yeah, and I want to believe I'm a people's person too. So of course, I get to teach them a lot of games. So yes, I'm big on multitasking. I can get multiple stuff done at once as much as I can get multiple stuff done at once as much as I'm interested in it. I'll always strive to get it done. So yes, those are my basic strengths.
There you go.
As always, yeah.
Here's a hint for those of you out there in game design land who are wondering, how can I up my skills? Here's one of the best ways to get instant boost. Like, you get an instant +1 to your game design skills overall. And this is it. Work in a game store or at a booth at a convention for a game company, selling other people's games. And what you're going to end up doing is doing exactly what Femi is doing, is teaching lots of people that game over and over. And you'll get to the point where you're doing stuff that Katie and I were talking about, which is refining how you explain the game in understandable language, in really easy, approachable language. And the more you can do that, the better you become at it, and the faster you become at that. That means your games will have that aspect. When you pitch them to publishers, you'll be able to pitch better. You'll learn what people like and dislike about games and how you explain them, or about the game themselves. It's fascinating. I learned more at Origins in one day working for my friend's distribution company, selling games that weren't even mine, than I did probably that whole year as a game designer. So that's just a little tip for you out there. If you've never done that before, give it a shot. It is a wonderful way to learn about board gaming and design. You actually learn about design, which is fascinating to me, that you could do that by selling people's games. Because a lot of game design is actually, can you communicate your intent clearly, graphically, in words, vocally? Very important. If you want to follow me on Twitter, you can find me at Senfeng Lim. And we are always at Meeple Syrup on Twitter as well. If you are at all interested in supporting the Meeple Syrup Show, check us out on Patreon, www.patreon.com/meeplesyrup. There's lots of levels, lots of tiers. You help keep the lights on. And what'll happen once, because we started this whole Patreon thing just a little bit before, maybe about a half a year before lockdown happened, and all of a sudden there were no more conventions to go to. But our goal with Meeple Syrup is to go to conventions, or for this particular part of it, is to go to conventions and highlight the work of new designers, showing off prototypes, board game panels about design, all that kind of stuff that people will find hopefully interesting. A little subset of people will hopefully find interesting. So if you want to support that, please check us out. Support if you can. And last thing is, we are often on Clubhouse. Myself and Banana Chan talk on Clubhouse once a month about indie RPG design. And then Helena Capel and myself talk once a month. It's the second Sunday for Helena and myself, the fourth Sunday for Banana and myself. And Helena and I talk about pitching to publishers, basically. She's a publisher. She runs Kid Table Board Game and Burnt Island Games. And I have a wealth of knowledge in how to pitch games to publishers. So we share that on Clubhouse if you are on that. And I believe Clubhouse now has an Android version. So those of you who are on Android are no longer locked out of that little thing. So that's something to do as well. Can I get from my esteemed guest here, Femi, can you give the audience one piece of advice? It's one piece of advice for them.
Okay. That piece of advice will be networking, because I think I've benefited a lot from that, and I think that's a big factor to the growth of this industry, of tabletop industry, networking. I've learned a lot from people, and of course, in my little way, I've got to teach people a lot and communicate with others. So yeah, networking.
There you go. And Katie, what's your piece of final advice?
My advice is just do it. Just make anything. Like, don't be afraid that somebody else has done it before you or done it better. Make your vision and get it in front of people, even if it's ugly, especially if it's ugly. Just get it out there and get it tested.
That's a great piece of advice. Thank you so much, both of you, Katie and Femi, for coming on the show and being the first of the Tabletop Mentorship Program people to drop in. We'll have more all across the month of June. Happy Pride Month to everybody out there celebrating. Next week on the Meeple Syrup Show, we will have illustrator extraordinaire Ian O'Toole. If you want to learn about how to make pretty pictures in board games, he's one of the best of the best of the best. So Ian O'Toole will be with us on Wednesday night at 9 p.m. Eastern Standard Time at our regular place, regular channel. Other than that, we'll see you all next week. Friday Night Forums, we'll have more people, more mentors and mentees from the Tabletop Mentorship Program. We'll see you soon. All right. Bye-bye.